But even in general, just people are hurting, whether it's mental health or other type of diseases and cancers that they may be affected by. I got so much hope in the early days of people doing stuff like this.
We all know that there are a lot of choices out there when it comes to cancer prevention, from diet and exercise to lifestyle changes. But what if one of those changes was as drastic as completely having your stomach removed in order to eliminate any threat of hereditary cancer? Well, that's just one of the many challenges that our guest today, Dylan Davison, has faced. But Dylan is not just a cancer survivor. He is a family man, a successful business exec, a triathlete, and he currently serves on the board with No Stomach for Cancer. In this episode, we'll be walking through his inspirational story from diagnosis to the remarkable feat of becoming the first triathlete to complete a full Ironman without a stomach. Dylan's story is nothing short of remarkable. So join me on this inspirational journey as we walk through a story of determination, resilience, and triumph here on the Cancer Athlete Podcast. Dylan, what's up? How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I'm excited to meet you and talk with you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, today's a special day for me, at least. This is the first podcast episode of Cancer Athlete, and thrilled to have you be a part of it. So thank you for, I guess, just seeing the vision, being an early supporter, and taking the time to share your story with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for reaching out. And as you and your listeners probably know, it's these type of stories that, get us off the couch and get us active. And I found that to be really helpful for me. So hopefully it can be helpful for others.
Yeah. Amen, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you. So you've got a really inspirational story that needs to be shared. And I do believe that this conversation will impact others for some time to come. So enough about me and the show. It's actually about you. So and something that you've recently accomplished. And you recently completed the Ironman Chattanooga, which is a full Ironman. Believe that was 144.6 miles. That in itself is a remarkable feat. So congratulations on that. But really the thing that's more remarkable is that you, to our knowledge, are the first person to complete this without a stomach, which was the result of a total gastrectomy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I've only spent a few minutes Googling, so it's possible that I may not be the very first, but from my understanding, I'm the first, and it was a really cool experience. As you know, in Ironman, nutrition is kind of it's the fourth discipline, as they often say. So doing that without a stomach took a while to figure out, and then I finally was able to come up with the formula that got me across the finish line. No matter how I felt afterwards, I finished, which I was psyched about. That was really the ultimate goal.
Yeah. And I want to hear about that, because I think that's naturally when we hear, that you've had a total gastrectomy, where my mind, I just want to go straight to nutrition. That's what I want to hear about. But if we could, let's back it up a little bit. So, total gastrectomy, full Ironman. I know there's a big journey in between there. So if you would, can you just share a little bit about yourself? Let's talk about the discovery and diagnosis, and then kind of work our way up to the recent Ironman Chattanooga.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found out that we had a couple of family members within my direct family and also extended family that had stomach cancer when they were pretty young. And also relatively healthy, so not the typical stomach cancer demographic, if you will. And so, thankfully, one of my mom's cousins actually did some genetic testing to find out, what was going on, if there was some type of correlation. And she actually did find out that she had a CDH1 gene mutation, which is a genetic condition that you can probably Google it and get more information than I can describe. But more or less, some of the cells that we create, they don't have a perfect structure, and so it causes stomach cancer. Uh, they don't really know why, and it doesn't create tumors. It creates diffused stomach cancer, which is also known as signet ring. So, long story short, it's very difficult to detect. And so, once we found out that that was in our family, many of us got genetic testing, started to learn more about it. We learned things like the average age of onset was 38, and at the time, I believe I was 32 or 33.
Okay.
And the chance of getting it, if you had this gene mutation, which I found out that I did have the gene mutation, same one as my family members, is the chance of getting stomach cancer at the time was thought to be 80 something percent. It was very high.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's very, like I mentioned, it's hard to detect. So the crazy story is they recommended to get a total gastrectomy, which means they remove the stomach completely. At the time, I didn't know if I had cancer or not. I was seeing a specialist at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and he said, I could. His feeling was he was in the 99th percent certain that I had it, even though that a local endoscopy here in Charleston, South Carolina, they didn't see stomach cancer, which is not uncommon because it's so rare. Only a couple hundred people in the U.S. A year have this diagnosis. So I kind of thought about this a lot and felt like if you can remove the chance of cancer 100% or roll the dice and get stomach cancer and not know how bad it is, and likely already had stomach cancer, but you couldn't tell until after surgery at the time. Lots changed in 5 years, but at the time, this is the information I had. Um, and I
Okay.
went ahead and said, listen, I don't want to die of stomach cancer. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I had at the time it's called a prophylactic total gastrectomy, meaning you have a preemptive surgery to remove any chance of getting cancer. Well,
Yeah.
during the
Okay.
procedure, of course, they analyzed the stomach. Come to find out, I actually had stage 1 stomach cancer, which obviously I didn't
Oh wow.
know. From my perspective, I didn't have any symptoms or anything, but that's not uncommon. But the good news is that I did not have all my lymph nodes came back negative, so it was a true stage 1, and they were able to treat me just with surgery. So that was great. No chemo or radiation or any other further treatment. But then I was on the journey of having to learn how to eat and drink and do all the things without a stomach, which was quite the crazy experience for sure. And that was in
So
2008. Or, sorry,
2008,
2018. Apologies.
18. Gotcha. Dylan, so will you kind of explain the procedure? They literally removed the entire stomach. Like, how does that work? And how do they connect it back together? And
Yeah. So I had the same questions, Mike, when they told me, but crazy enough, they've been removing stomachs due to stomach cancer and other things for over 100 years, and I didn't even know you
okay.
could live without a stomach. You can,
Me neither.
you
Yeah.
can. You have certainly some health challenges, but from my perspective, again, this is like the health challenges you live with are certainly manageable. And knowing that I'm not going to have stomach cancer was something that I certainly wanted to have in my mind. So I'm on a vitamin
Yeah.
regimen to help with iron and B12. And then I have a multivitamin specific for people who don't have stomachs. Um,
Okay.
and then, they essentially connect your esophagus to your small intestines, and you have to overchew your food. In the beginning, it's very dramatic and challenging, but over time, your small intestines becomes more adaptable. So you can eat small meals, and you just eat, more often, more frequently, and obviously smaller portions.
So it adapts, like it gets used to receiving food that hasn't been processed through the stomach, but like does it grow and expand
Yeah, a
or
little bit of
are
both. I
you
mean, I don't know how much it really expands, and it is a little bit different from person to person, and each surgeon has a little bit different technique. Some surgeons will actually make a
sure.
pouch, if you will, but my surgeon just he was very successful in what he did, And his process was, over time you get more room to have more space, but certainly still can't. My 13-year-old son can easily out eat me without any competition.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is. I can often finish a meal or get close to it. Or what I often do is my wife and I will just, we'll get an appetizer and a main meal and we'll split it, and it usually is perfect.
Him out eating you, that was coming anyways.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. That's a bad example, but
Yeah.
most people in my house, except for my daughter, she cannot out eat me, so I still have it on her. She's only 8 though.
Still got
Yeah,
one.
still got one.
We'll take our wins.
Yep.
um, so early on, after diagnosis and your procedure, I'm thinking back to kind of that period in time for me. I went through some dark times, kind of mentally, just thoughts, emotions, some of the unknowns. And so I guess, one, did you experience that yourself? And then was there a particular moment that kind of sparked your motivation to pick back up? Because if I understand, you were already very athletic and had completed a half Ironman, but then had this procedure. So was there a time that you transitioned, kind of went into a slump, but then kind of pulled yourself back out and ultimately kept going?
Yeah, I did a couple things. So I've done a half Ironman before. I had this procedure. I believe that was I must have done the half Ironman in 2017, I think. And then the recovery was just, it's very hard to explain to someone who has never had a stomach removed. But and
Sure.
maybe you can relate, because I thankfully didn't have to go through chemo radiation or some of that really intense treatment. I had to really just kind
Okay.
of focus on eating small portions, not drinking too much, timing it all out. And I took a really meticulous approach, because if you got sick, it was just horrible, as you could probably imagine. But your abs are. I had an open procedure, so they cut through your abdomen wall, so you don't have any abs. Shortly after, your muscles are trying to grow back, so you're really weak. You ache pretty badly. But then, like, the smallest thing, eating too much oatmeal one time, you know, was just horrendous. Like, worst kind of cramps I can imagine. So bad you feel like you can't breathe. It's really really bizarre. So my approach was, don't eat too much, don't drink too much. I don't care if I'm skin and bones and I lose all my weight. I just did not want to feel bad. So
Sure.
that's kind of how it was rough early in the beginning. And yeah, I would say the first 2-3 weeks were really dark. It kept getting darker, and from my perspective, because once I was in the hospital for about 5 days or so, and then came home, and it was nice to be home. But then you start to want to do things that you've done before, like eat food or drink water, and you really had to be super careful. Um, and so there was one moment specifically where I was probably like 2 or 3 weeks in, and I remember, like, the ice had melted in the water, so it was like the perfect temperature that you'd like just come in off mowing the lawn here in Charleston. Gets really hot, that you would just like chug it. This was right before bedtime though, and I just had this
Right.
moment of not paying attention to what I was doing. Grabbed the water. As soon as it like hit my lips, I was like, "Wow, this is so refreshing." I'm sure I was super dehydrated, and I just took a couple of gulps before I realized, like, "Oh no, like, I'm not supposed to do this." And it
Yeah.
was almost kind of like, as it was going down, like, different sounds were happening that I had never heard of,
Mm.
within just a moment, a very short number of minutes. I was just in super intense pain, um, and I was in pain for like 3 hours, just rolling on the couch, thinking something horrible has happened. I was actually texting
Yeah.
a buddy of mine who kind of mentored me through this process, and I was like, "I'm pretty sure I got a bowel obstruction." He's like, "No, you don't. Just hang in there. Like, you broke the golden rule. You drink too fast or too much or ate whatever." And then finally, when it went away after like 3 hours, it was just like an instant. 1 second I'm in intense pain. Next second I'm like, "Wow, it's gone. This is amazing." So I went over. I opened up my notebook. I was like, "That's never happening again." So I just
Yeah. Lesson
Yeah,
learned.
100%. And so I literally just took out a spoon and started like taking that same water that was like, obviously not there was still a lot of water in there. I just started taking a teaspoon or whatever it was, tablespoon, whatever spoonful of water, and then I would hit a check mark, and I looked on my watch, and then it would go by, and I'd do it again. And I sat there for an hour and did it, and the whole thing was gone. Actually, I had to refill a little bit. So I realized, like, okay, if I just sit there and do what I'm supposed to, if I follow these rules, I'll feel great. I'll get enough water and hydration. Apply the same technique to the meals. There are some, like, especially early on, all kinds of specific rules. Like, you can't eat and drink at the same time. You have to space it out. And so I just took like a super intense, methodical approach and journaled it all, especially in the beginning, because I just wanted to feel good. Well, then once I started feeling good,
Yeah.
I was able to go to the gym, and I just started off walking, and then started speed walking on the treadmill, and then added some incline. I'm sure it looks super cool. And then about 6 weeks in, I got cleared to go for a jog. And I remember jogging the first time, and it felt a little strange, but I was just like, here I am. Like, I'm on the road to recovery now. Like, I just went for a run 6 weeks after having major surgery. So that was a big step for me. And I just kept on that path. I did a sprint triathlon here in Charleston. They do a really great series on James Island. But anyways, that was amazing. And not only did I do well, I like posted one of my best times in a while. So I was feeling fit. I was feeling strong, and starting to navigate the nutrition piece. And so I kind of just took that process from the tablespoon approach into a lot of things I do. But interesting enough, when COVID hit is whenever I kind of fell back into the victim mentality, laziness, because all the races were canceled. So I, stopped working out, and because that was only 2 years in, I couldn't really gain weight, but I could eat kind of whatever I wanted. So, a cup of chips didn't feel like I was gorging, but it was just like, I didn't have to worry about my weight. Well, then I just lost a ton of fitness, obviously. And so it was after that, actually, once things started opening back up, that I was like, right before COVID, sorry, I should have mentioned this. I did the Ironman Florida. It was the half Ironman in Haines City. So that was a pretty cool check mark for me, because I did the half Ironman before stomach. Now I did one with my stomach removal. I was real nervous when I signed up for that, like if I could do it. Like, I had done a sprint, I did an Olympic, and I'm like, okay, it's a little more than 2 Olympics. We can figure this out.
So how long was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, how long was that between your initial procedure and then that half Ironman?
That was about, I think I want to say 16 months, if I remember correctly. So it was supposed to be a year, less than a year actually. But what there was, because I had signed up initially for half Ironman North Carolina, and it was in Wilmington, and then we had like a hurricane that like basically canceled the race, I believe. And so I got bumped to Florida, which was in the spring of 2019. So yeah, it was in like April. So it was from January to the following April.
Okay. And share with us, what does, for those that don't know, what does a training block look like for you? Kind of briefly. I know that could be a big conversation in itself, but preparing for the half Ironman.
Yeah. So I learned a lot through this, because I found out that a lot of these training plans online are really bogus. But so let's see, if I'm trying to remember the timeline, but I think what I did was I downloaded, probably like a lot of athletes, I downloaded some online 70.3 training program. But what I found out is that like I was just so sore after workouts. I could do about half of what they recommended. So I would do like a long ride, and then I'd be sore for 2 days, and then I'd swim, and then my back would hurt, and then I would run. And so I was doing like 3 or 4 workouts a week, and can't believe I actually had a great performance. I improved my time from 170.3 to the other. And so that kind of opened my mind to like training plans, and they don't have to be this hard. So after that, I did the same plan, and I actually posted this on my blog because I just happened to have it. I did a 3-day-a-week running plan for the Charleston Marathon in 2020, and I did it. I think it was in January. But basically, it was like a recover like a long run, a recovery run, and then some intervals, and I did that 3 days a
Gotcha.
week, and I had my best performance like a 4:15, which isn't super fast, but for me was my best marathon at the time. And so
Yeah.
similar idea was I just couldn't pack on the miles without feeling super sore. So and also my nutrition plan was just hilarious. I literally
Yeah.
wore a camel backpack in the marathon because I was so worried about over or dehydrating myself. And I would stop at every aid station, fill it up, add some electrolyte tablets, hit a couple gels when I felt like it. I think I was doing like 1 gel an hour, if I remember now. And that worked. I got
Okay.
over the finish line, but again, just really sore.
Yeah.
So that all changed though this year. Whenever I was going to do the Ironman, I was feeling the pressure, trying to make my own plan. Again, really sore, thinking like I don't know if this is going to work. And it was like I did in the fall. I did mostly base training, so all zone 2 type stuff. And
Hmm.
then in March,
Yep.
my wife and I were kind of like, well, if we're gonna like at in March, I was thinking like this is gonna be tough. I don't know how this is gonna work. So she was like, well, listen, we're putting a lot of time and effort and money, so I feel like we need to make sure this works. So I was like, great, I'm gonna hire a coach then. So I actually reached out to a
Cool.
coach who they specialize in kind of getting a manageable training plan, roughly 8 to 10 hours a week. And they were real hesitant to bring me on because they just didn't understand the whole no stomach thing, nutrition wise. But they were like, if you
Okay.
work with us one on one, I think we can make this work. But just so we're uncharted territories, which I appreciate the approach, but it definitely added some fuel
Yep.
to the fire because my wife had also been saying, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this. And, whenever you go through these type of things in life and then someone's like, I don't think you can do it. For me, I'm like, well, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
to make a long story short, this training plan was 6 to 7 days a week,
Okay.
and most it would I would say 2 or 3 days were slow, and then everything else was actually shorter, high intensity stuff. It's a little bit different than what I had
Yeah.
done, but it was really targeted, really well designed. And the crazy thing, which doesn't sound crazy to you, Mike, but and I'm sure other athletes listening in are going to be like, well, obviously. But because I didn't have a stomach, I just felt in my heart 5 years later, there's no way I can hit some of these nutrition goals. It is what it is.
Okay.
And the coach came back to say, like, hey, the reason why you're so sore is because, like, yesterday you got 42 grams of protein or whatever it was, which
Mm.
is, like, obviously super low. And I had just gotten lazy with, I don't have to count calories because I'm definitely not eating too much. But what I didn't understand is like, I need to really focus on hydration and my protein intake just to kind of
Yeah.
recover and then carbs to fuel. And so once I
Yeah.
had a much better plan, I started actually recording what I was doing. I was able to get back up to like, 1 gram per pound. So I was doing like
Per
160,
pound.
165 grams of protein a day and hydrating well, like a couple electrolyte tablets a day on top of just my normal training plan. And literally, most of the soreness was gone. I was able to put a whole week together, no days off towards the end. And I couldn't even think about doing that a couple years ago. So that was a huge learning curve for me.
So nutrition and then kind of consistent, not necessarily zone 2, but consistent lower intensity mixed with some higher intensity in there, and that allowed you to have the longevity. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
nice to have someone that has done this before because there were several times. We have 4 kids, and I work a job, and I
Yeah.
nonprofit board chair, so quite busy. And there were many
Yeah.
times I'm like, hey, I can't hit this workout today. What do I do tomorrow? And so they would have like key workouts, so like you can't skip these. You have to all in on these, and then other ones you could. So there were many times I had to get the things shifted around. And that was another thing where I would have probably goofed that up if I would have done that on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, with everything, and I'm in the same boat. I got 4 kids, working full time, just on and on and on. Life, you gotta be able to adjust and adapt. The programs are great, but there's got to be a little room in there for you.
Yeah.
So, um, if you would, let's fast forward to just what was it, about 2-3 weeks ago, here in Chattanooga, the full Ironman. So, uh, beautiful course. It's a beautiful area. I happen to live here, and so I'm a fan of the course itself. But why don't you tell me, how the event was for you? I saw in doing a little research. I was going back and looking at the highlight reel. They got a little piece on you. I don't know if you knew that, but I saw you on their highlight reel. Congratulations! But just share how'd the whole event go for you?
Yeah, thanks. It was really cool. I had no idea they were going to do that, and then like next thing you know, they're like on a motorcycle next to me while I'm biking, which it was really wild.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so it was amazing. Chattanooga is beautiful, and the weather was honestly perfect. It was a
yeah,
little chilly that morning, to be honest, and I haven't done a full, so I wasn't sure how they were going to do things. Definitely should have had more clothes in the morning clothes bag. Pro tip out there, you do get the morning clothes bag back. So I should have had some more warm clothes, but it was beautiful. Very few clouds. I think the hottest it was like maybe 82, 83, which running in like 110 heat index in Charleston, 83 felt a little
sure.
chilly. It was fantastic. Um, and so weather was amazing. And this is where you walk around Ironman Village. I don't know if you've ever been to one of these events before, but like it's
Yeah,
almost kind of like, I don't know if cult following is a bad term, but literally it's like the Ironman tattoos. People are wearing Ironman gear from 10 years ago, and you're kind of
yeah,
like, oh my goodness, like this is like, guys, come on, like why do we have to try so hard? But then by the end of it, you're just like, holy cow, these are my people. Because they're just
yeah,
so nice and they just love the sport of triathlon so much. They love Ironman. The Ironman staff were extraordinary. The volunteers were just top notch. It was so fun. So, yeah, it's just, I was really proud of how everybody was. And
yeah,
the course was great. So it starts off with a river swim through the Tennessee River, and the current was ripping, which was awesome for me, just because swimming isn't
sure helps.
yeah,
Huh?
swimming isn't my strength. Sometimes I get a little bored. My shoulders get tight, which I don't love that feeling. So if I'm going to have some excuses, it's going to be on the swim. But I had no excuses that day because it was a wetsuit legal and the current was ripping. I think my normal time would
Yeah,
have been 1:15, and I rolled out at 47 minutes. So it was
nice.
so fast, and that was a cool start. And then the bike was just absolutely perfect. I went 6 for 6 grabbing water bottles from teenagers, so that's super fun.
Yeah,
And had to pee about 4 times, which is not shocking for me. But it was just beautiful. It was a little congested getting out, but then once you get into like the open country into Georgia, it's just so pretty. It was spread out
yeah,
well. Everybody was super courteous. I didn't see anybody drafting unintentionally, which I had seen that at some of the other 70.3s. Um, and then around mile 80 up towards 100, you start to feel it then for sure. It was a hilly course, not like crazy mountainy hills, but you definitely had to get in some lower gears. And those last couple
yeah,
of hills, you're kind of like, okay, when's the bike over? But had a better than expected bike split time for me. And then the run, surprisingly felt really good off the bike. Like I was so excited to be there,
okay,
healthy, no issues on the bike. And the run was great. The Chattanooga course is a 2-lapper on the bike and on the run, and there's some particularly hilly sections of the back. So
yeah,
you come off this bridge and then you go up the famous Barton Avenue, which is so steep. Um, I mean, I only saw like 2 people actually jogging it. Almost everybody was
right.
walking. That's how steep it is, which is a good idea.
We're power hiking.
Yeah, you power hiking 100%. So, I mean, I saw my wife and my kids on the bridge after my first half marathon, and was feeling
Yeah,
great. And I was thinking, wow, if I can negative split this, I'll be sub 12 hours. I'll finish in the daylight. This is just going to be the perfect day. Um, Around mile 16, though, it started getting pretty dark in my mind, and my legs were
yeah,
certainly hurting. Um, but I just started kind of feeling a little off around like 16 or so. The gels started like not going down very well, and so I started slowing down on that. Um, I was probably overhydrating a little bit with more water than electrolytes, so I think I got a little
okay,
dehydrated at the end. Around mile 18 or so, I remember I had like, you know, normally an hour left, and I was just like not feeling good. Little, had a really bad headache, feeling pretty dizzy. So I knew something was going on. So I really I pulled it back a couple of gears, and I kind of run the last 6 miles or so. So
Yeah.
it was about an hour longer than I expected out on the course. But I finished 13 hours and
Got it done.
23 seconds. So I was really happy about that. Had to get an IV at the end just because I was a little disoriented and like kind of about to pass out. Like the last mile is like downhill. And so it's
Okay.
kind of hard to walk downhill. And so I'm just like, well, I'll just jog this out. Well, then it's like you're cruising like an 8:30 pace and you're not even really trying to. Well, that kind of put me into like a weird headspace because my heart rate got up and it was towards the end, etc. And so, anyways, they rushed me to the med tent, but the people were awesome. And after I got some fluids, I was feeling as good as you can after an Ironman.
Now, I know there was a personal, achievement and accomplishment here, but also you kind of hit on it just a minute ago. But you work with a nonprofit, which is No Stomach for Cancer, and you were raising awareness and funds during this event. So, if you would maybe share a little bit about how you got connected with No Stomach for Cancer, and if I understand, they raise awareness and funds for research and support for people that have had stomach cancer or impacted by it, and then your current involvement with them.
Yeah. So you're right. I had an interesting conversation with my old doctor who he retired before I um, signed up for this thing. And he was like, you're not, this isn't a good idea health wise. An Ironman doesn't necessarily make you better in a sense of like, it's probably not good for you overall. And I was like, yeah, I'm aware. And he's like, just understand why you're doing it. But honestly, there were a lot of reasons why I was doing it. One was just for me. I'm kind of a growth mindset. I like to set goals and like to do hard things. And I want my kids to look up and say, even though someday things get tough, but look at all the cool things my family was able to do. So that's something I think about.
Absolutely.
Also, I've had a couple family members that passed away from stomach cancer. So knowing that other family members might have to deal with this, and we can still have extraordinary lives and do hard things afterwards. But even in
Mm-hmm.
general, just people are hurting. Whether it's mental health or other type of diseases and cancers that they may be affected by. I got so much hope in the early days of people doing stuff like this. Like my friend Steve Dang, who I met, he had his stomach removed and he did a half Ironman. And so he really motivated me to go out and do a half Ironman.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I find that we all really, we're in it together in a sense and helping each other. And similarly, when I found out I had this diagnosis after some Googling, I came across No Stomach for Cancer. It's a really small one employee nonprofit that focuses on helping those affected by stomach cancer worldwide, patients, caregivers, all these anybody, and then also raising money for specifically some of the stomach cancer that's not funded by the federal government or these other agencies. Um, and the kind of stomach cancer I had was just so rare; it gets basically no funding except from these private foundations like No Stomach for Cancer. So after I made it
Okay.
through the procedure, I just had a relationship with the founder and reached out to the executive director and said, how can I get involved? And next thing you know, I was able to join the board and help them from like an administrative side of things. And some of our jobs as board members is to fundraise. And I'm also in the technical or technology world. So I help them with a little bit of technology from here to here. Um, and so I wanted to do something in this Ironman to create some excitement, maybe motivate and encourage some people, and hopefully raise some money. So I launched a campaign to raise $10,000. We're about 85% to that goal. Um,
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it open for a few more weeks, which I'm excited about. I think we'll get to 10,000. It's just coming in slowly. Got a couple other things to try to promote it a little bit, but that was a big moment for me. A buddy and I ran the Charleston Marathon and raised $5,000 in 2020, and
Wow.
so this 10,000 mark was a big ambitious goal, and really blown away that we're this close and can't wait to get over the edge.
Yeah, $8,500. That's phenomenal right there. And I was going to ask if you still had the link up. We're going to put the link on there. I know we don't have a huge following today, but if somebody may hear this and have the resources to be able to push you through your goal. If not, if that link's been closed and you're watching or listening to this later on, I assure you that No Stomach for Cancer will be available. Go online and we'll put those links on there if you wanted to donate and help support them and further their cause. So, Dylan, if we can kind of shift gears a little bit here and let's turn this more towards the listener here and maybe somebody that's been impacted similarly or going through a similar journey. What would you say to the listener that's maybe recently been diagnosed or they've been diagnosed for some time, but maybe they're not quite as far along in their journey as you are?
Yeah. I appreciate that opportunity. I spend any of my free time outside of my family and friends and some of the other hobbies I have. I spend my free time talking to patients that have stomach cancer or they're caring for someone that has stomach cancer. But I also talk to other athletes that are going through similar challenges just because they somehow find my name or something. I don't even know how it gets around, but
Yeah,
I love talking to people like that because I felt like I needed that. And I had some friends that I met online that helped me whenever I was kind of struggling. And so I always go back to that moment when I was in pain and the pain went away. So I had like this opportunity to make a decision, I can try to press the envelope a little bit, eat some more food, drink some more water, probably overdo it and feel bad again and just get on this like carousel that never ends, or like take that baby step approach. In me, it was the teaspoon approach, I guess.
yeah,
And so I had to get really meticulous. And sure, it was boring, writing down in a journal what I was going to eat. But looking back, obviously it was worth it. There were moments on that when I was on the couch and I'm like watching my wife do everything at the house. I was worthless, we literally can sit on the couch and sit there. I mean, she was homeschooling, she was cleaning up everything that all my kids were making a disaster. She was cleaning up my food because I would inadvertently overeat and I'd leave it out because I didn't feel good. And I saw her just like working so hard and it was amazing. She never complained once. And I just felt like I want to get healthy again because I have a great family. It's worth fighting for. Um,
yeah,
and so I could have easily just said, no, I'm not going to make a list. I'm not going to make, write down these teaspoon additions because it's boring and stupid or whatever negative mindset I wanted. But clearly looking back, I mean, that's all I needed, right? It's just a little bit of action. And then I started feeling
yeah,
good. And then it was the snowball effect. And looking back, I'm just so thankful that I had that moment because it's, you probably had similar moments, Mike, where you're just like feeling like, I'm never going to run again. This was a horrible idea. Like
absolutely.
you second guess everything. You feel like everybody's against you. And there's something about feeling good. Whenever like I feel good, I feel like I can do anything. But
Yeah,
when you feel horrible and your mind's not right, you don't have energy, you don't have strength. I mean, it's a really dark place. Like I'm thankfully I've never had like a moment where I've been depressed. But there were two
yeah,
times that like I feel like I started to have that glimpse of what that mindset was looking like, and that one time was about 2 weeks after my procedure when I felt hopeless and weak. Um, and then the other time was just a few months ago. Actually, didn't know, but my iron levels were super low, which happens when
okay,
you don't have a stomach from time to time. I just had gotten lazy during COVID with getting my blood checked. So when I had to get an iron infusion. I felt great, but it's a long way of saying, Mike, that I started with the smallest thing possible, um, and my goal was just like, well, listen, if I can just feel good, I can go out and put the work in. So that
yeah,
would be my encouragement: is like make the smallest step you can in order to feel good, and then put a plan together to do whatever you want. I just had some buddies that don't have stomachs that just hiked some really difficult mountain down in Death Valley, and their story was, man, it was a brutal hike. You got to pack in all your snacks. You can't like cook this huge food. You got to eat during the hike, like continuously, and then water. You have to overhydrate. So it was really a tough battle for them. But they had a kind of a similar approach. It's like, we're not going to let this define who we are. Let's go do some hard things.
No, thank you. And I know that'll impact others out there that are listening. Um, so how about to speaking to similar to cancer patients and listeners out there that maybe are a little further along in their journey? They're out there doing awesome things. Uh, Maybe would you just speak to the importance of raising awareness about cancer through sports and other abilities that we have?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mike, because, um, you know, whenever I found this out, I was like overwhelmed by the word of cancer because, like, we're pretty young.
Yeah.
I had some friends in high school that had cancer, but it was like shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scary. It makes you feel very isolated and alone. You know what I mean? But then you find out, like 3 bikes over during the Ironman was this lady, and she was talking to me about her cancer journey. And
Yeah.
she had many years on me, and to know that she was still out there as a cancer survivor doing an Ironman, 3 bikes down. I mean, I was blown away, and I was like, "That's
Yeah.
incredible! Like, this is why I'm out here is because I want to be able
Yeah.
to keep doing this." Like, someone asked me, like, "Well, what's next after the Ironman?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure. This is just one mountain that I was able to climb in a mountain ranges of life. Like it's not Ironman, then and you're over. It's a continuous journey of adventures." And so that really motivated me when I met her. She was I can't even guess her age, but she was a couple of decades older than me, I would guess. So that was really inspiring.
Yeah.
And then after the race, as I was asking the volunteer for an IV, and he's like, "Sorry, we can't give you an IV." And I was like, "Well, I don't think you understand. I really need one. I don't have a stomach." And he had like intestine cancer, and he was sharing his story, and
Okay.
he had a matching scar as I had. But connecting with these people that they gave him 5 years to live, like 20 something years ago. So you hear these
Wow.
stories, and it's so much stories of hope, and you know that their battle was just so much harder than my battle, and it gives so much life and energy when you see these people out there fighting and still going through
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So I would just encourage continue to do whatever you're doing if you're out there as an athlete after you've had some traumatic event in your life, and scream it from the rooftops because there's so many people struggling. In my opinion, these moments of hope are so encouraging, and everybody's looking for a story of inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's perfect right there. Cuz Dylan, just you sharing your story today, that fires me up and I know it's going to fire others up. When I came across your story, uh, I was just blown away. And as you say, well, hey, there's so many other people out there that have it harder than me. As I sit and listen to yours, I'm like, man, he's got it harder than me. But that's kind of the importance of take that message and put it out there because it's just going to inspire others and encourage others, and especially in our community, we need that encouragement, we need the support, and ultimately that's the hope here with the channel is that we can be a central resource to collect these stories and put them out. It's not about me, it's about you guys, and it's about just spreading a lot of encouragement out there. So um, real quick, if anybody wants to get a hold of you or maybe get in contact with you, or how can they do that? So how can people get in contact or find out more about you, Dylan?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking. I'm not real great with like social media anymore. I took like a hiatus during COVID, and then I come back and
Sure.
I'm like double posting on Instagram and having like social media files and whatnot. So I'm most active on Facebook. That was kind of the OG social network that I grew up in. So feel
Yeah.
free to reach out to me on Facebook, probably the easiest way. I'm also on LinkedIn. Those are the ones that I do most. So that's probably the easiest way. But happy to connect with anybody that might need, some encouragement and hope. And as you know, Mike, there's so many times when you don't want to go put the miles in for whatever reason. It could be anything. And it's these type of stories and connections that you're like, I'm just going to go do the work. And then you get out there and you feel amazing. And then you hear about the hard stories of people who can't do it for whatever reason. So I
Yeah.
appreciate what you're doing. I'm excited to see where this podcast goes and follow along. So I appreciate you reaching out. I'm really excited for it. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of your story too. I've only heard little pieces of it. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate the effort. Tell the wife thank you for giving me some of your time today, um, and as you continue to work on the podcast, I'm sure it's going to be a big effort. But tell her thanks as well.
Yeah, thank you, and likewise, because I know you've taken quite a bit of time out of your day. So thanks for connecting, getting together. Again, thanks for sharing your story here on Cancer Athlete. You've inspired me to get out there, really in the raising awareness and support for our community, just with my own gifts and abilities. And so I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And again, I'm going to provide some links on there for No Stomach for Cancer. And Dylan, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.